There was a recent report that was released by the Goldwater Institute about what Arizona should do with closed schools. Now, Tucson in particular was cited in this report because TUSD is on the verge of having closed 19 schools. They've been elementary schools, middle schools, and as of this fall, 19 will have been closed. Some of those school sites remain vacant. Others have been leased. One school has been leased to a private school. One is going to be leased to a charter school. According to the Goldwater Institute, there should be a state law requiring that school districts must lease or sell unused property within 18 months of a school becoming vacant. Now, in my opinion, this creates a whole host of problems, and I'll talk about those, but first I want to talk a little bit about the Goldwater Institute and this group's ties to the charter school industry. Because when they're talking about selling or leasing these vacant properties, they want those leased or sold to charter schools or private schools. So let's look a little bit into this organization and their links to the charter school industry. The Goldwater Institute, based in Phoenix, gets national money from pro-privatization advocates like the Koch brothers. They are tied to groups like ALEC that are anti-tax, pro-privatization. They are very tied to the BASIS charter school system, which is in Arizona and now growing, spreading to Texas and Washington, D.C. Clint Bollock, who files their lawsuits, is on the 7-member BASIS board of directors, as is Steve Twist, who is a founding member of the Goldwater Institute. So these are not people without a vested interest in seeing that charter schools indeed take over unused properties. The BASIS school system in Tucson wants to now expand into the kindergarten through 4th grade realm. They're opening a new kindergarten through 4th grade school in Tucson, and I'm sure they would love to have a closed TUSD property. Now, when we're talking about free enterprise, because that's what school privatization is, why would a competitor lease or sell its property to the competition? So when Goldwater thinks about education, they think about free enterprise. One group is competing against the next. So why would the government require one group, let's just call it a business because they consider education to be a business. So let's say TUSD is a business. It has something, a factory that it is mothballing at the moment. Why should it be required to sell or lease that factory to the competition? In a true free enterprise system, you would never be required to do that. But the Goldwater Institute wants to pick and choose when it uses free enterprise and how we use free enterprise. And in my mind, this is an issue of local control. TUSD and any other school district in the state should retain control over when they lease or sell a property and who they lease or sell that property to. They are not beholden to the charter school industry, and it would be a very sad state of affairs if the state legislature requires them to do so, which is usually what happens whenever the Goldwater Institute proposes something, it becomes law. So, Dave, I'm curious about your thoughts on this.
Well, I am no friend of the Goldwater Institute, and I've been studying their education policy for years and been writing about it, usually very negatively. I absolutely agree there should be no state legislation. That's typical of what's been happening in the state, where they rail against anything that comes from the federal government, but somehow the state should be imposing on city and on county, and in this case on school districts, exactly what they should be doing. That being said, I'm conflicted about whether school districts should easily lease or rent or even sell buildings to charter schools, simply because I'm not thinking about it from the private enterprise models you were talking about, and as the Goldwater Institute thinks about it. And I'm not sure that it wouldn't be a good idea to utilize some of those systems if somebody else wanted to do some education in it.
I agree with you in the sense that if it makes sense for the school district to do that these properties should not be sitting vacant. But let's also remember one of the reasons that we have closed schools, it's because we have a state legislature that refuses to adequately fund education so that we can keep these schools open, and you have charter advocates that go in there and fight against better proper funding for neighborhood schools. So I would hate to see them be the beneficiaries. Also, neighborhood schools have to educate everyone. Charters can pick and choose. So let's say you have a baby boom in an area. It's not wise to have sold a school in that area if in the future you're going to have children in that area that you are required by law to educate. So it makes sense for the districts to be able to have some flexibility in what properties they keep a hold of, because of the fluctuations that you have in population, booms and dearths. Right now, the east side of Tucson has aged out, and so that's where a lot of the school closures are. In another era, there are going to be more kids there, and so you don't want to see all those properties disposed of.
Well, I bow to your greater logic. I still feel conflicted about it, but I think your logic is sounder than mine on that issue, so we'll leave it there.
Okay.